how do I get into technology? Now, I got so many questions like that. People wanted to be programmers and developers. And that made me to say, there is a problem which needs to be solved, because if I'm getting questions, it's because they don't have answers. And so, how do I provide those answers?
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Breach Podcast, and thanks to each and every single one of you that come back every week to listen, learn, and grow. Now, you all know how exciting it is to pack up your bags, say your goodbyes, and travel across the globe to start life in a new country. But the thing we often don't realize is that there are some unique challenges that you will encounter in your new country. Each week on this podcast, I bring to you the leaders of the organizations that provide settlement and integration services, or I bring to you an individual whose story, whose journey and purpose is super exciting and super inspiring that I want to get them to share their stories with you. Well, my guest today is Dr. Elliott Simo. He is a digital transformation specialist, and he's actually the president of the Digital Transformation Center and the president of the LaCroix Institute of Technology. The thing I find very interesting about Simo is that he is a first generation immigrant. And when I reached out to him initially, here is exactly what he said. Helping immigrants is my core motivation, and my second company, LaCroix Institute of Technology, is aimed at doing just that. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to welcome Dr. Elliott Simo. Elliott, thank you for being on my podcast today.
Thank you, Ida. My pleasure. I'm happy.
Awesome. So I've known you from way back when we were back in
Yes.
school.
Right.
And so I think I'm going to ask you some questions that I know the answers to, but our audience don't know the answers to those ones.
Right.
Okay. So you came to Canada how long ago?
It's been 9 years and a half,
Okay.
2013.
And that was directly from Cameroon, right?
Yes, straight from there.
Yeah, yeah. So what was your first impression when you landed here in Canada?
Well, interesting, because I'm actually trying to write a book about my comparative experience. Back in Cameroon, we usually had impressions of the West, Canada, based on Hollywood movies. And so that's the kind of image you build of a developed Western country. All the roads are straight, paved. There's no potholes. There's no litter. There's no beggars on the street. Nothing like that. And well, you imagine what cold could look like by putting your hands in the fridge. But then it's different when you actually land, and you get hit with the first sign of cold, the first wave, and you see it's really different. It's not just the fridge, it's worse. And you
Yes.
start seeing certain small things that uh, weren't very clear when you watch a movie. And so for me, my impression was it was just a mix of, I was surprised most of the time because a lot of things I got to see were very different from the impression I had built either from movies or from stories, anecdotes, or just my own experience living some of those things. So, yeah, I would say it's mostly surprise that overwhelmed me for many weeks. That was my main feeling.
I remember when I just got here, that was in the month of April. And so they
Mm,
were just getting off of the winter season. It was just the beginning of spring. But I wasn't
right.
coming here from a cold place. I was coming from Douala. Douala,
Mm,
where the average temperature is close to the 40s every single day, 40 degrees Celsius every
yeah.
single day. And then I landed here and they were like, I hope you have shoes that can cover your legs and
Exactly.
protect you from. I'm like, wait, you're telling somebody who's coming from a place that's the equivalent of Texas in the USA.
Yeah,
And you
exactly.
asking me if I have shoes to cover my feet. I don't.
We don't need shoes with that kind of weather.
No, no, you need sandals. And so
Yeah,
on the professional side, you were a professional already before coming over to Canada, correct?
that's correct. So I spent, I worked in Cameroon for about 5 years. All of that work was in the finance sector. So typically in Cameroon, when you work in the finance sector, everybody considers you a banker. But I wasn't a banker. I just worked in uh, financial institutions there in Cameroon, mostly in marketing analysis. I started off pretty small because that's not even what I studied. And when I was in the university, my major was political science and my minor was economics. But I've always had this well-rounded view of so many different things, and so it was very easy for me to uh, get a job first as a teller. I used to work as a teller, and then I became an operations analyst. Then I became the branch manager. Then I became the director of marketing and strategic initiatives prior to moving to Canada. And so I grew slowly and surely over the span of 5 years. So coming to Canada, all my experience was in the finance sector, but not specifically finance, not accounting, not banking proper. But that's a resume of what I used to do in Cameroon before moving here.
Okay. And then when you moved here, then, because I remember when I came here, I came as an accountant under the Quebec Selected Skilled Worker Program, right?
Yeah,
And so
same.
you're coming, you have the validation in your head that, hey, they value my experience, they value what I have to
Exactly.
put on the table. And I'm thinking, I'm gonna come here and just get into my accounting field and start doing things exactly like that. But no, I started at a telco, the call center.
Hmm.
Do you remember your first job here, and how did you get it, and what were the challenges that you like, first of all, the reality that
Hmm.
hit you, and what were the challenges that you had to overcome at that one?
Well, just like many immigrants, when we come, most of us and many people don't realize that the average immigrant, especially Africans, would be highly educated, would have at least a first degree, or most would have a master's degree, and would have had many years of experience back home. Now, not Canadian experience, not to discount experience back home, but real work experience solving real business problems. And so when we move here, the expectation is, well, I'm going to just continue, because I was allowed to move to Canada based on my work experience and my education. So I see that they would allow me to just continue from where I left off. But the reality is that when you come in and you start getting things like, where's your Canadian experience? Oh, I don't know about that degree. Where's that school found? And all of those questions that make you realize, well, it looks like 5 years of my life was just, wasted, so to speak. And so, in some ways, it's very disappointing to start off from scratch, like you. And I think that's the story of many people who go through Montreal or Montreal, whichever way that you want to
English or
pronounce
French?
it.
Yeah.
Exactly. But then we mostly, I don't know any immigrant in my community who did not do something at Atelka. So that was me. When I came here, um, I remember my very first story was somebody I put out my resumes on all of those websites, Job Boom, Monster, and all of that. And the only call I had was from Investors Group. So when Investors Group called me, I said, "Oh, Investors Group." I checked it out. It looked like it is a very good company, well reputed. And so I was very excited. I went for the interview. That was my very first here. I didn't even have my suit and all of that, so I had to rush get a suit. I dressed up to impress, obviously. So when I got there, they explained everything and they said, "Oh, you're hired." And I was surprised. I said, "Why is it that easy?"
Mhm.
But they got to explain the details. So I wasn't hired as an employee. I was hired more like a financial, you know, uh, like a financial, I don't know, advisor or something like that on my own. I was going to be an independent advisor, and I needed capital to be an advisor. I needed to have a network. I needed a bunch of things. And I look at myself, I'm like 2 weeks old in this new country. And somebody is asking me to, but I'm grateful. I'm grateful because it really opened up the door for me, so to speak. I had no idea what Canadian French
Mhm.
could sound like. I didn't know differences. And at that call center, people would call, and sometimes you would have irate customers, irate callers who are mad about some, I don't know, billing issue. that wasn't some kind of experience I had
Yes.
back in Cameroon. And so it was strange for me to sit down, have headsets, and hear somebody just yell and say words that I didn't even know what they meant. So
Yeah.
most times I would just smile, but they would be cussing and saying all these things, and I just sometimes would say, "Oh, thank you for the compliment. I didn't even know what all those things meant."
I'm sure that
You
made
know?
them even mad. I'm
Yeah,
insulting you
exactly.
and you're thanking me.
Exactly. But then, yeah, it was that at Telka experience. I was there for about a month or two uh, before moving to the Royal Bank's call center,
Mhm.
and that's how I started, feeling my space in Canada.
Okay. That's amazing. Wow. So your story at Atelka is very similar to a lot of people. Like I got a lot of those calls and I was there for a number of months actually. I got in April, towards the end
Hmm.
of April. I started working at Atelka like in May at the start of
Yeah.
it. And I was there till about the end of that year, 2010.
Hmm.
Because like you, I was dropping my CV in lots of places, but of course they told you to dumb down your CV, right? You have to like strip everything off of your CV if you
Yes.
want to get a job at those call centers. So I had two versions of my CV going, the one for the call centers and the one for the accounting jobs.
Exactly. The real one.
The real one. And so most of the accounting places, they'll call you in, they'll talk to you, they would like you, but the only thing they would say is, well, you don't have Canadian experience.
Exactly.
And so it gets to this place for most people where if you don't have grit, which is something that you talked about I read about in one of the things about you. If you don't have that grit, that resilience, that resourcefulness
Hmm.
to keep going, even when you get doors shut at you just end up in this place. Plus, at that time, you're probably already in a lot of financial stress,
Yes.
and so you have put yourself in a position where you don't even have a bargaining power anymore.
Hmm.
And so a lot of people find themselves in that. But in your case, so you moved from a telco and then you moved into the call center at the bank.
Hmm.
At what point did you then decide to start venturing out on your own?
Actually, that seed was, I've always had this entrepreneurial spark in me. And so, uh, coming to Canada, one of the reasons why I moved here is not that I didn't have career opportunities. It's mostly because I grew too fast from being a teller to being the head of a full department, and I felt like I had maxed my full potential
Yeah.
because of that very quick growth in Cameroon. I wasn't a millionaire by any stretch, but then I was okay. I was living my life as a single person, just okay, being able to make ends meet.
But you were
And
not being
so
challenged anymore in your professional life.
exactly. I didn't have that challenge. And I was very aware because being in my department, we used to help small businesses to set up. That's mostly what I do. I did back then. You help businesses to you provide them with capital, but then you provide them with advice and things like that from the financial institution.
That was in
That was in
Cameroon?
Cameroon.
Okay.
Yes, that was in Cameroon. And so my work experience had led me to see that it was very difficult to be an entrepreneur in Cameroon. Not just that, my mom, my entire family has something around business. My mom, for example, is a serial entrepreneur. She has done
Mm.
everything. I saw her struggle to set up just the administrative side, getting capital. You always have to mortgage your house uh, or get a bunch of co-signers, and it was just not very pleasant to set up. And so my goal, one of the things I wanted to do moving to Canada was to set up my own business, and I thought that Canada would make it a lot easier for me to be in that space where I could do exactly what I wanted to do with limitless potential. And so that seed for me got triggered again when I got to the interview with Investors Group, and they explained to me about all of these beautiful things about being an independent financial advisor. And for me, it was very attractive. I knew I wasn't ready for that at the time, but I kept it in the back of my mind. They gave me a bunch of, I still have those documents somewhere, like a business plan manual, templates on how to document my customers. It was a full starter kit
Yeah.
for a small business owner. And I appreciated that. And so I always kept that, and that's where I had it in my mind. So I started off small. I knew I needed to have something stable, like my stable job, so I could have my insurances and a stable source of income.
Yeah.
But I knew where exactly I was going with my entrepreneurial ideas.
So walk me through the your entrepreneurial journey. So you started in 2013. So you got here with 2011 or 12?
13,
13. Okay.
yeah,
So the same year you got here, you started
same
a
year,
blog.
exactly. So I was very bored at the time. The only thing I would do is I'll go to my 4 p.m. to midnight job, uh, and most times during the day I was just doing nothing. I would just I was tired of reading the Welcome to Canada manual. I had read it many times. I didn't have the interest to read any new books at the time because everything was just new for me. So I would spend most of my time on phone calls and all of that. So I decided, okay, I'm starting to get used to, I've been here for like 2 months. I'm just going to do something. So I started writing about business, just putting my knowledge of how a business should run and how problems should be solved, mostly on the business case side. I was a very strong believer in having a good business case to have a good business.
Hmm.
And so I spent time just writing about business cases and posting it on my blog. And it also helped me to learn how to build websites.
Hmm.
And so the blog was called The Bread Meal. And initially when I selected the name, I in my head, because many things happen inside, in my
Hmm.
head, I was imagining an actual bread meal where you have hard work, you have transformation of, the dough that produces something that you can actually see and feel. That's why I called it the bread meal, a
Yeah.
place where you produce things, ideas, or solutions.
Yeah.
But then when I was registering my blog, I saw the bread meal was mostly bread meals, was bakeries. And so I said, anyways, that's what I selected. I went with the breadmeal.org, and that's how my journey started. Some people started contacting me randomly from the internet,
Hmm.
asking me questions about, oh, could you help me with? I have this question. Could you help me with the? Most people would ask me about their business plan or ask me about whether or not their business is feasible. Mostly very
Yeah.
small businesses
Yeah.
just starting up. And so I started spending my time answering questions, answering emails, and uh, just that. And
Yeah.
it gave me ideas. I said, oh, what if I spent more time doing this? Because now I'm starting to enjoy providing. Pretty much, I was like a small business mentor. And
Hmm.
so I started enjoying it and finding new ways to provide more advice and develop my own skills at that. And so it's from there that it started. I
Hmm.
remember I also decided to join this network of mentors. I forgot the name, but it's pretty much it's an open network where you register based on your experience. You have a profile, and entrepreneurs from everywhere in the world, they come to the profile and they read about you
Hmm.
and they select you to advise them on something. It could be marketing, it could be any part of their business where they have challenges. Of course, they wouldn't be able to afford the top 5, top 10
Yeah.
consulting firms, so they'll take advice from anywhere. And so I started seeing what it meant, how the feel of providing advice to businesses, and that's how I started honing my skills slowly and surely. And so that's where I started. And by the end of 2013, I had done that so many times over so many months. It was about 6 months by then that I decided to focus more on just providing advice to companies, mostly small businesses. And
Hmm.
so the bread mill morphed into a new firm called ENS Strategies. ENS short form for my name, Elliott
Yes.
Simo. So ENS Strategies. And by then I started learning a lot about businesses and structures and all of that. And I was quite good at what I was doing. I had pretty good reviews on the mentorship site. A lot of people were very pleased uh, because my motivation is usually not uh, the pay. It's usually just solving the problem. I get super pumped when the problem is solved.
Yes.
For me, pay is just a bonus. And
And that's
so
the real
yeah,
entrepreneurial spirit right there.
yes, exactly. I really like, for me, if you have to supercharge me, show me a problem.
Yes.
When you show me a problem, I just, it's like you've given me something, and now I can work. Now I can solve something. And as soon as I solve it, I'm bored and I need to move on to the next thing. And so that's just how I rolled back then with ENS strategies. Uh, I stayed with ENS strategies for a long time, for about 5 years. Mostly it was mostly my side job. So by the time I started ENS, I was already at the bank
Hmm.
here at the Royal Bank. And again, my first schedule was 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And so I had time in the morning to do different things, and I didn't finish too late, so I had time to catch up on other things. And so that's how I managed my time. Then after that, I had another schedule that was 4 p.m. to midnight. I loved it because I had all the time during the day
Oh,
to do gigs on the side and just develop my skills. And so that's how my journey progressed. I was learning a lot. Most of the things I was doing back then, 2013, 2014, were for free. Many people don't know, but I was just volunteering my time, and I would keep getting questions from people about, oh, how can you, do you have time to help me sit on this project? Or I would just ask somebody who is a veteran, like a veteran business analyst
hmm.
or a veteran project manager, can I shadow? Can I just listen in? Can I come to your office and just learn? And I did so many of those investments in myself, mostly for free. And by mid 2014, I had started to see that I needed to learn how to implement technology systems on my own. I had done that previously in Cameroon at the banks, uh, but then I'd done that as part of a team. And so I wanted to learn how to pilot the full project and all of that.
Yeah.
And that's just how I morphed into, I think by 2014, I didn't even know what business analysis was. I hadn't ever heard of the term business analysis.
Hmm.
But it's funny because I was actually doing the work of a business analyst. I had the full skill set of a business analyst. I just didn't know what it was called. And so, in the course of doing research and a lot of reading, also, I found the term. And I had always thought that I was just this strange guy because I would always sit down in my cubicle and I would have all these solutions to business problems, but I didn't know why I was thinking like that. I
Yes.
just thought I was strange. But then when I found a term for what I was doing, being able to see different angles of, pretty much we call that now business acumen. So I have a strong sense of business acumen. I have this ability to connect dots, uh, and so I was doing all of that, and it was above and beyond what a customer service rep should be doing.
Yes.
But then doing customer service was helping me to communicate. I learned things about how to ask questions the right way, how to listen. Those are skills which I hadn't, perfected doing other things. And so my main job wasn't a waste. I was learning a ton because I was
Yes.
intentionally seeing it like, when I discovered business analysis, I started seeing everything around me from the lens of business analysis, and that made me to appreciate my skills a lot more, and that made me to be very conscious about what I was delivering. And so from there, in ENS started getting quite some traction. I started doing real IT projects, ERP projects mostly, and CRM projects.
ERP
And
stands for what?
enterprise resource planning.
Okay.
So those are enterprise-wide technology software systems used by pretty much everybody in the company. So everybody uses the same platform, be it sales, finance, manufacturing. All
Mm-hmm.
of you work from the same platform, and it makes things a lot more efficient for the business, and it makes information a lot more reliable. And so I started learning those things and seeing how all of the dots connect. And so my focus was not really on my 9 to 5, or at the time 4 to midnight. I was really spending a lot of time on my side gig. And so usually when I come to work, I'll be so tired and I would not even want to be there because I must have been told something so interesting, a problem that I need to solve. And all I'm thinking about is I
How do
need to
I
get
go?
home. Exactly. I need to get home so I can think about, brainstorm this thing and come with a solution. But anyways, I did a lot of things on the side. I joined uh, a network. Uh, Actually, there's a term for that here in Quebec. They call those people pigistes. So a pigiste is somebody um, who's an independent consultant
Mm-hmm.
who has some skills, like a graphic designer, like an accountant, who has some skills that they could market independently. And so they're usually uh, uh, subcontractors on projects, or hired as contractors by companies. And so when I learned that, oh, there's actually a term called pigiste in French, and you have so many platforms where people could just create profiles, just like Upwork, just like Fiverr, and all of
Mm-hmm.
those platforms where you have skills, digital marketing, web development, and you just put it out there, and people would solicit you. So you don't have to, uh, you know, be in a suit and tie and work for the most flashy consulting firms. That
Mm-hmm.
is consulting. You're
Mm-hmm.
helping small businesses. So that's how I saw it.
The pigistes are those independent contractors, or the pigist is the person who then sources them?
No, the PGS is the independent contractor.
Okay.
Yeah. But that contractor is hosted on a platform, I would say,
Okay.
like Upwork, like
Mm-hmm.
Fiverr.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are so many of these platforms. Some of them are in French. I forget the names. In Quebec, that kind of work is called pigiste.
Okay.
It's like you're not fully part of a project. You're just a tiny part. You're contributing. You're a contributor to a full project,
Yeah.
pretty much. And
Okay.
so by then, ENS strategists, I was doing well on the site. Like I was okay, um, and I had learned a lot. I was really on top of my game by 2015, 2016. But I decided I needed to do an MBA. So I was doing that. I was doing my MBA, and I was still working at the bank. Uh, at the time, it was hectic, and my personal status started to change. I started to have a family, and so it was quite a lot. It was
Yes.
quite something. But I never gave up because I have my goals, I have my dreams, I know exactly where I'm going. I'd written it down on a piece of paper, and so I was just following my roadmap. Mind you, you don't always have to go on a straight line. Your achievements don't always follow a linear path. One of my managers at the bank, when we used to talk about um, career opportunities, he told me, listen, Elliot, you don't always have to go the next step up. Sometimes you can do lateral moves in order
Yes.
to do a vertical move. And that was an eye opener for me. And that's exactly how my career path looks like so far. It has never been a very
Straight.
straight line. It's always been, oh, okay, let me take a few steps on the side and get some skill set which I need to go forward.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always been that way. So by 2018, I was already ready to be on my own. But then I started having some challenges with ENS strategies, with capital, and the need to. I was actually ready to scale, to expand. But then I started having challenges with all of that uh, infrastructure, like how do I expand, how do I hire, and all of those questions. And it seemed very easy for me to just take a job, just be an employee. And so I got hired by a Franco-Swiss company as an IT project manager. I was grateful because I met somebody whom I consider to be my best manager ever, Patrick
Hmm.
Galami. So I met Patrick at Group T2I. I worked there for about a year. He taught me a lot of things. He being a former president of a software company, I forgot the name, very gracious. He knew me also because he had worked in Douala in Cameroon
Okay.
a long time before. And so there was just that very nice bond. I learned a lot from him. And so that's one of the things I always had. I've always had that uh, people who taught me something
Hmm.
as I've grown. I've always had a mentor or somebody who just gives me all of that information I need. And so after that, I got hired in another company because Patrick left for somewhere else. And so I got hired somewhere else. And quick tip, um, one of the fastest way to increase your income is by changing jobs. Well, not every year, but if you look at it this way, if your salary increase is usually less than 5%,
Hmm.
and if you're waiting to increase your salary, let's say you're on $50,000 per year and you hope to be on 100K, six figures, it's going to take you a long time to get to 100K just by salary increases. So
In the same company, yes.
in the same company, exactly. So I found that, oh, the easiest way for me to increase my salary by 20K a year, by 25K, was just by changing jobs, leveraging my skills, and moving somewhere else. Now, you can argue about loyalty and all of that, but I think we've gone beyond that age where companies look for loyalty. Companies look now for delivery. Are you
Yes.
delivering the results and all of that? And so when I discovered that, I was very eager to move. And so I moved. I hadn't buried my companies. I was still with ENS, but ENS was very low skill now. And so I worked for 2 years as an employee, but then had started doing my doctorate degree by 2017 to 2016. As part of my MBA finishing, I started another company called Exotic Group.
Oh, I remember that one.
Yes, Exotic Group. So Exotic Group was supposed to be an online e-commerce market space, pretty much like an Amazon for African related items,
Yes.
apparel, so clothes and all items. Coming from the fact that I just found it difficult to buy and use the things which I had grown up to see here. And so that transition was always a struggle for me. And so many years after having lived in Canada, I still felt like I needed to provide that service. And I started seeing a lot more immigrants who crave the same things like me. And so I worked on this project with a few classmates of mine back in my MBA, and we decided to set up that project. I was the lead. Of course, the project didn't succeed. I made a few mistakes then. It lasted for about 18 months. It was a real project. It was actually registered with
Hmm.
the government agencies here for enterprises, but it just didn't work. Like so many millions of businesses that wind down less than a year after they start. And so
What do you think
I
was the main reason why it didn't? Was it just not the time for it, or what do you think was the main reason why it didn't work?
well, it was a combination of so many factors. I did some miscalculations. So for example, in order for Exotic Group to work, I misunderstood my supply chain.
Okay.
So I had to rely a lot on supplies from China, but I didn't have any agent in China. And I got to realize that finding an agent in China on my own was difficult. I tried to reach out to agencies like EDC, Export Development Canada, uh, but then it's also a procedure on its own. I had
Mhm.
some partners that could help me, but it It wasn't always very easy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one miscalculation I had. The other one was I underestimated the offer. One thing about doing a business is you should be able to solve a problem when you're
Yes.
doing a business. Now, if you're not solving a problem, if you're just going with the flow, you would most likely not have a business. And so those are some of the things which I miscalculated. I was going off of the fact that I really wanted to have an online marketplace for African, apparel and African products. But I didn't realize that that wasn't really solving the problem was not the fact that we didn't have e-commerce platforms. We do have e-commerce platforms, by the way. But then, given that I wasn't solving a real problem, the the offer did not take off as it had to take off. Those are my lessons learned from that venture, added to what I had learned from ENS strategist and the bread mill before that, plus my experience with the financial institutions I worked for, plus my experience with the two companies I worked at as a digital transformation manager and IT project manager. I put all of that together, plus my MBA, plus by 2020 I had finished my doctorate degree, and so I was ready.
Mm-hmm.
So put all of that together in one nice package. I had my fruit salad, beautiful mixture of so many different things. So I was ready. And that brought me now to my current company, Digital Transformation Center. So as part of my doctorate degree, I started getting interested because as a project manager and as a business analyst, I was involved in so many projects that had to do with implementing software for companies.
Mm-hmm.
And trust me, most of those projects failed because it's either um, uh, a problem with the users, maybe the users just don't understand the software, or the leadership team doesn't support the venture enough,
Mm-hmm.
or it was just a bunch of different problems. So the failure rate for technology projects like that, some people put it at 70% and
Wow.
more. And so I saw a lot of failure. I participated in a lot of failure, but then I am an eternal student. So I spend my time learning. So even when I fail, I just, next thing you would see is I would ask myself questions. Okay, I failed. Now what next? What can I
What
do about it?
What did you
What can
learn
I
from the
learn?
failure?
Exactly.
Yes.
What do I learn from that? What do I discard? What would I not do next time? And what would I keep doing? And so that was my strategy. I just kept using that. So with all of that package, I decided to start Digital Transformation Center because I had a very good understanding of digital transformation by then.
Mm-hmm.
I could see digital transformation everywhere, and it just made logical sense for me to brand myself in that space. And so I started DTC, Digital Transformation Center, and the sole purpose of Digital Transformation Center is to help companies to, successfully take on well, not take on, successfully embark on digital transformation. And so I started doing that in 2020,
Mm-hmm.
early 2020. I was pretty much on my own. Again, I tried to find partners. So I tried to merge my company with an existing company. Uh, and I was actually taking on the role of vice president of technology in the new structure. But then I quickly realized that our visions did not match because I had something in my mind. There's something I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to achieve with Digital Transformation Center. It's not just uh, a technology implementation company for me. It's a vehicle to educate companies. It's a vehicle to, help
Yeah.
companies avoid this cycle of failed projects.
Yeah.
And so I held on very strongly to that vision. Uh, and I didn't want to limit that only to the construction industry because my partner at the time is a very strong construction industry guy, very skilled at what he does, super professional. an engineer, but his vision is limited to the construction industry. And I
Okay.
just wanted to do all of these things. And so, given that clash of visions, I said, you know what? I'm going to focus. I know I have all of what I need to just be on my own for now. And so I'm going to focus on doing what I originally envisioned for Digital Transformation Center.
Mm-hmm.
And we shook hands, and that's how I took off on my own. And since 2020, that has been my story with Digital Transformation Center, being involved in uh, major implementation ERP or software implementation projects for different companies. Now, mostly with the and food transformation and food distribution industry, but also manufacturing, some construction companies. Pretty much, I have my hands uh, in different industries,
Yeah.
and that takes us to 2022. So, as part of my implementation journey, my discussions, conversations with business leaders, and just seeing the problems that come out of all of these software implementation projects, one of the things I realized is everybody talks about digital transformation, but many people don't even understand what digital transformation truly is. Why? Because there's no, well, consensus is starting to be out there, but 2 years ago, there wasn't really some consensus on what digital transformation is. Some
Mm.
people called it a project. It's not a project, it's a journey which has so many different projects. So it's like your learning experience. You keep learning, but then you have different milestones. And so, um, in the course of doing that, in the course of having those conversations with companies and helping them to see things differently, I realized that the companies they wanted not only technology, but they also wanted something that I call digital talent. And so digital talent is what it is this employee or this set of employees who are not just skilled at what they do. They're not just, okay, I'm a very good accountant, but I'm a very good accountant who knows how to use technology to
Yes.
accomplish my job. I'm not just a salesperson. I'm a salesperson who knows how to use a CRM tool to accomplish my task.
Yeah.
And so that's digital talent, the tech savvy employee. And a lot of people struggle with technology. It's fascinating how, well, not fascinating, but it's surprising how uh, companies spend millions of dollars implementing software, and they actually don't use the full potential of it.
Yeah.
They use maybe 50% potential or less. And the people who are supposed to use all of that or make all of that software power or technology power come to fruition usually are not as skilled as they should be when it comes to using technology. And so because of all of that, then I also started getting, so that's one, my experience with companies. Then the second vision here was I started getting a lot of questions from my friends, my brothers and sisters, uh, immigrants like me, who look at me and say, "Gee, I know this guy from far. How did
Yes.
he transition? How did he get to where he is right now?" And they started asking me questions. How do I get to do something in technology? How do I transition? And I look at
Yes.
the person's profile. This person works in the warehouse. Uh, this person uh, the job every day is to carry boxes of frozen fish and put it on a truck, and that's it. Back in Cameroon, they were, I don't know, one of my friends who is now a business analyst in Cameroon, he was an internal auditor. He has a master's degree in banking and finance. And when he came here, he couldn't find a job as an auditor, of course, and he couldn't find a job in the financial sector because his personality, he's very shy and doesn't know how to, talk about his skills.
Yeah.
And so many of those opportunities got beside him. And when he asked me, how do I get into technology? I didn't know exactly what to tell him because he didn't have any technology skills whatsoever. He
Mm-hmm.
didn't know anything about coding or even the soft skills. And so when I looked at his CV, I started seeing a lot of similarities with my CV, and I oriented him towards business analysis. And so he went to Ash Ursay. He did a certificate in business analysis and was done in a year. And he actually works for Revenue Quebec as a business analyst. Now
Nice.
he didn't start he didn't get that from day one, but he finally got to where he wanted to get to.
Mm-hmm.
So he's in technology now. He analyzes business processes and payroll systems, and he feels very happy about it. Now, I got so many questions like that. People wanted to be programmers and developers, and that made me to say there is a problem which needs to be solved because if I'm getting questions, it's because they don't have answers. And so, how do I provide those answers? And it so happened that I'm the president of an association called ASEC, Amour, Solidarité, Entraide Canada. So it's a club of friends. All of us are immigrants from mostly Cameroon, and we've all grown in our different careers. But the goal is to bring people together and make sure that we help newcomers integrate into the fabrics of Canadian society and feel
Awesome.
comfortable in a way that we did not. So we're providing that warmth which we probably did not have, not for anything, but just circumstance.
What's the association called?
ASEC, Amour, Solidarité, Entraide Canada, ASEC.
Okay,
So
nice.
it's been existing since 2013. That's been my social support group mostly. We're like 15 of us and very like-minded professionals, but we're friends, more to that. And
Mm-hmm.
so I got questions from friends in that association. I got questions from the public, from different places. And that's where I decided, okay, I'm going to do something to help. And that's what led me to Lacroix Institute of Technology. So I
Mm-hmm.
decided to create Lacroix. I set it up in January of 2022, and the sole purpose is to teach people how to use technology. So there are two types of people. I will teach employees how to get more familiar with using technology so that they can, you know, do their jobs in a more fulfilling way. And I will teach individuals who have nothing to do with technology how to transition from their careers into technology. So I've had to uh, teach a lot of different people. I've taught nurses who have transitioned into business analysis. I've taught um, different people, accountants, customer service, lawyers, people who had all of those backgrounds from somewhere in the world, just coaching them, just showing them where to go. I've taught somebody who had a certificate in technology from one of the universities here in Quebec, but didn't know how to present her skills in a way that could be appealing to employers. And so she ended up being a receptionist
Wow.
at a company where I was doing consulting for. And so when I met with her, we spoke, and I saw that she has a lot more potential than her current station. And so we talked and gave her some advice and some courses, did some courses with me, and she transitioned. So right now she's a software implementation consultant. And so that's it. That's really what energizes me. That's what makes me smile when I go home and I see all these people who craved to do better for themselves coming from somewhere else, or even if they were just here. I mean, the fact that we're immigrants doesn't mean we're less fortunate. There are some people who were born and bred here who just didn't have uh, access to either information or advice that would make them to go from one state of life to a better state. And so that's what energizes me. And so that's a that's an extended version of my entrepreneurial journey from 2013. I think I did a good job summarizing 9 years worth of trials and side things in 20 minutes.
You did an excellent job. And if I show you my notes here, you want to see it. Look at that. I've been taking
Oh my
notes,
God.
and I have a
That's
bunch
what
of
a
questions for you.
thesis.
Yeah, I just didn't want to interrupt what you were saying because you were in the flow, you were in it. And guys, if you're listening to this, if you've listened to this so far, I just want you guys to know that you've got what it takes to create the life that you love. You just need to believe it.
Yes.
And if you think you can't, then there are people in the community who are amazing people who want to help you achieve the goals that you set out to. First of all, you just need to remember for yourself, why did I come to this country? Why am I
Exactly.
here? And if you can remember exactly why you came here, then you can start to ask the right questions, not just questions, but the right questions. And even if the person you ask doesn't have the answer, they can point you to somebody who has the answer. Okay, so I'm going to go into some questions that I wrote down here. So,
Mm,
the lessons you got from your company, the Exotic Group, the lesson from that was number one, the supply chain was a problem. And number two, you need to be solving a problem with your business. I
mm,
think that is something that a lot of people have not come to terms with. Because I was coaching a lady not too long ago, and she is trying to start a business of importing African fabrics to sell to people. And she says, well, when people start their businesses, I support them. And I started mine, and nobody wants to support me. And I said, don't create a
mm.
business for your friends and family.
Right.
Create a business that's solving a problem. What problem are you solving? I think
Mm.
that is something that people haven't grasped, that they need to be solving a problem. Is there something that you can kind of highlight for somebody to be able to know that this business I'm trying to start, is it solving a problem or is it not solving a problem?
Yeah, that's exact. Uh, I was mostly doing trial and error before doing my MBA. And so I learned during my MBA that, and you don't have to do an MBA to learn that, but my experience was I learned it when I was doing my MBA that in order to have a sustainable business, you should be solving a problem. A consumer doesn't come to your business, to your shop, to your company because they love you. Even if they do love you, they wouldn't necessarily buy because of the love they have for you. They would buy because your service or your product is doing something for them. And so if you see it like that, everything we do has to be able to solve a problem. Um, some problems don't necessarily have solutions that the private sector can offer. And so the government steps in. But most problems do have solutions, except wicked problems, like trying to, if your business is trying to solve poverty for the whole world in the next 10 years, that's a wicked problem. How would you solve poverty for the whole world in 10 years? It wouldn't happen. But if you look at it this way, like the lady who's trying to import African fabrics, it's good. But then the devil is always in the details. And so if you do an analysis, you say, who are those who would be the potential consumers of this product? You need to define a market for yourself. What makes them to buy those African products? And so you start seeing challenges like I saw with my own online fabric e-commerce site where people don't buy those African fabrics, and I don't say those in a pejorative way. I
Yeah.
mean that specific kind of fabric. Uh, they don't buy that kind of clothing very often, so they
Yes.
are very seasonal because we come from a very equatorial climate where it's warm all the time, and so you could permit yourself to wear certain attire that goes with the weather. Secondly, they are very colorful, and so with the doom and gloom that surrounds winter here, sometimes very cloudy days, uh, you don't want to be dressed up in very something very light and uh, too colorful. Not that there's anything with the colors, but it's just not. Just doesn't fit, you know. And so I would not personally dress up the way I used to dress up in Cameroon here. And
Mhm.
winter here is like for 6 months. And so as a consumer, I tell myself, well, if I buy this, I'm going to wear it for a while. Summer is like 2, 3 months, and the rest of the time you're juggling between spring with the water and all of that, and fall with cold starting to show its head and all of that. And so you really have just 2 or 3 months. And how much can I buy? And so that's the definition of a seasonal business. And if you're going to do a seasonal business, uh, it the offering is already limited just because
Yes.
of weather. And so you have things like that. It's not that people don't want to support, it's just the fact that you're not really solving a problem. It's not like people in Canada don't have clothes. And most immigrants who come here already come with something like that. I remember in my suitcase, half of my suitcase was that because my family said, well, you're going to Canada, you probably don't have access to things like that. So here, that's it. And so a
Yes.
lot of people already have that in their closet. And so you just need to be mindful of what problem am I solving?
Yeah. And that's absolutely true because personally, I came with everything that was a clothing thing was in my hand luggage, and half of that was the African fabric. And truth be told, the things I brought, I didn't wear them for a long time. I wore them for some summer days, like
Hmm.
what was it, Easter Sunday? I wore one of those. Maybe there was like a traditional wedding coming up. I wore one of those, and that was it. So I have
Hmm.
them, but it's not solving a problem for me. So that's very useful. So just you saying that you have to be solving a problem, that really solidifies that for me. The second thing is about the vision. When you have a vision for your company, you need to remember that the partners that you're selecting for it as well, you guys need to be working towards the same direction, and don't be afraid to go out on your own. So that's a very important lesson I learned from you. And the third thing, which is actually a comment that you made online, it's if you don't understand technology, you will soon be replaced by it.
Yes.
Expand on that.
So so many different reports show that a lot of companies are investing in technology. The reason is simple: technology makes business run more efficiently. So think about it this way: the ERP systems I mentioned earlier, these are software systems, platforms, if you will, uh, that enable multiple people to have access to the same data in real time. So if I'm a salesperson, I sell tables. So in order to sell a table, I need to enter a sales order in the system. So I'm going to create a sales order. But back then, what will happen is somebody would physically write up a sales order, sign it, and take that sales order physically in a jacket and give it to somebody in the warehouse to pick. So the person would look at the paper and say, "Oh, I need to pick this table." Now there's a lag between the time when you move from your desk to the warehouse. The order may need to be changed. It needs to be updated. So there's all of that inefficiency just from that very simple, tiny example. Now, what an ERP system does is, since all of you work from the same database, it means John, who is the salesperson, enters the order, and uh, Jack, who is in the warehouse picking the items to sell or to ship out, immediately knows that, oh, there's an order. And Jack might even have a forehand warning because of the intelligence of the system that would say, well, get ready because during this specific time of the year, it looks like you sell more of this kind of tables than that based on your data from your history. And so you have those advanced warning systems, if you may, and all of that data that just flows nicely in the veins of the company. And it makes for very efficient work. It makes for more productivity. Companies make a lot of profit or cost saving. They save a lot of money, hence making a lot of profit just by investing a little bit in technology or improving their business processes.
Yeah.
And so, what's in it for you as a person? You need to understand the trends. It's not going to slow down. So, there's going to be even more technology. If I talk just about accounting systems, ERP systems, you have hundreds and thousands of different systems. Which one do you choose? And so there's an abundance of technology out there. And as the years go by, technology is going to get even more affordable for businesses. But you need to ask yourself the question as an employee: what's in it for me? Where would I be 5 years from now with all of this technology? And so if you don't know how to use technology, if you don't master the ins and outs, and you don't have to be a consultant, you don't have to know what's under the hood. You just need to know how to do your job with the use of technology.
Mhm.
Uh, if you don't know how to do that, of course you're going to be replaced. I could cite so many examples of jobs that have been earmarked to phase out in a few years just because there's AI, there's artificial intelligence that could, perform that task. There's a bunch of machine learning going on that makes for that kind of job to be pretty much redundant.
Mhm.
I'll just give you an example. Right now, when it comes to digital marketing, there's a lot of content. We're bombarded with a lot of information. Yes, human beings are very creative, but you can't imagine that, or you can't just believe that all of that content is created by human beings. So you have a lot of bots that just chew out, uh, you know, tons of information, very human-like information on a daily, hourly, minute by minute basis. And so it begs the question, at what point are we going to stop using human beings to produce content? So I know so many different systems that just help you to produce a full blog written in very high flown English language or whatever language. And all you have to do is read through, edit, post. I know. So that's just one very simple example of how automated technology could replace so many different jobs. Things like
Yeah.
tickets. You have people who are in charge of verifying tickets, like on the toll gates and places like that. Now you don't need that because with
Yes.
QR codes and scan technology, which has been perfected, uh, from a very great distance, I could scan pretty much all I want just by using my phone.
Yeah.
And so you have jobs like that. You need to ask yourself always. You always need to do maybe stock of your own skills and your own career. What's in it for me? Where am I going? What technology is out there that could affect my livelihood? Because that's your job. That's what you do. And so just be on the lookout for pitfalls or traps like that from
Awesome.
technology.
Awesome. Thank you. And one of the last few questions would be this is going to be related to Lacroix Institute of Technology.
Mm.
So you had mentioned that one of the fastest ways to increase your pay would be to change jobs. But
Yes.
also a very important element to that is you improving the value that you bring to the table. So
Mm.
not just changing jobs, but knowing the value that you're going to bring to the table and then using that as your bargaining power to change jobs. So bringing this down to what you do at Lacroix Institute of Technology, because you want to help a lot of immigrants. Like you said, it's your core motivation helping immigrants so that they can improve their skills and improve their skill set and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
what would it be like working with you at Lacroix Institute of Technology, and who are the kind of people that should, like our audience right now, who should be coming over to see you to improve their skill set?
So pretty much two types of people. So if you're an employee and your company is going through some change, some type of transformation, you just want to learn a little bit about what's happening, what's this system all about, without maybe overwhelming yourself at work. You could invest in yourself. You could sign up for a course at LaCroix or a webinar. It's not always a course. It could be a webinar. It could be a talk, listening to an informative talk like this one, where you have access to information on the subject. So that's one. The other type would be an individual who is actually working but wants to change, wants to do something else regarding technology. You could be a nurse, you could be an accountant, you could be anybody. It doesn't matter. There's always space for everyone. And so, what we would do first is to analyze your skills. What skills do you have right now? And we would identify what are the gaps. What do you need to close the gap to be where you want to be? We would establish some kind of timeline by when, if you're doing the right things, by when you should be where you need to be, and you would grow like that. Just to mention that, mind you, I've not mentioned any salary expectations because there's a lot of, noise out there, and I did a couple of videos on that regarding oh, when you start doing this, you'd become, you'd start earning six figures tomorrow. I hear a lot of immigrants ask me about, why don't you talk about being a scrum master? Now, I'm not trying to put down anybody's gig or side hustle or whatever anybody is doing. I'm just a realistic guy. And so most people would not earn six figures right out the gate. It takes time to build. People have different opportunities, and it comes to us at different points. I didn't start earning six figures just because I showed that, oh, you see, I have business analysis skills. It takes time, and you need to be good at what you do. You need to actually solve problems for the company. You need to add value. And so, what I would say is, with LaCroix, my first advice is always be patient, be grounded, always be realistic. Don't build castles and have them broken, uh, like those expectations just crumble and you start feeling that life is unfair. Uh, no, I don't think life is unfair. I think it's your expectations that were too high, of course, because of all of the noise that we see on the internet. So we have to stay grounded and we have to, know exactly where we're going. So have a roadmap. So those are the two types of people that would benefit. But then there's a bonus. Now, I also realized through my conversations with my daughters that the kids are getting access to technology way faster than we used to uh, get access. I remember the first time I had an email address was in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, in 2001, I was a teenager, but it was quite a ceremony to go to the cyber cafe and use your first email address. But
Yes.
kids nowadays move around with computers in their pockets. They have all of this technology. And so the bonus I'm trying to talk about is, uh, as of January, I would be hosting events where I would try to talk to kids, uh, of course, through their parents or with their parents, but trying to talk to kids about technology. What is technology? How do you use technology? How do you stay safe online? For example, I've had so many stories where people are so eager to jump on technology, but it's a double-edged sword. And especially when it comes to kids, I think we need to be very careful. We need to protect them. We need to prepare them by giving them access to the tools they need, but we need to protect them from predators. There are a lot of predators online. There's a very dark side to the internet that many people don't realize. Technology has this addictive, you know, potential, which even psychologists have started equating to uh, drugs and other forms of strong addiction. And so we've got to be careful about things like that. It's very nice to talk about technology and dream about making money off of technology, but there's all of these consequences. So that's the bonus. Besides training human beings, people to either get better or to change their jobs, that's what I will be doing. Helping kids to stay safe, to be smart kids when it comes to using technology. Use technology, but use it smart in such a way that it doesn't cause harm. And so that's the bonus I reserved for last.
That's absolutely amazing because that's one challenge that a lot of people will have. Because here's the reality of it, right? Most of us were here. We are first generation immigrants.
Yes,
We don't have the aunties and uncles and friends and people who, the way we grew up, we could just have somebody around the house taking care of you.
that's it.
We don't
That's it.
have it here. And so by default, a lot of parents turn to technology. They would give their kids an iPad, a computer, something to go and entertain themselves.
Hmm.
But because we're trying to solve a problem, we are creating another problem without even knowing. And like case in point, I saw a video about a month ago of this
Hmm.
kid. I think it was a 12-year-old kid who
Hmm.
destroyed the entire house because his parents took away his cell phone. And because this kid has had that addiction, I think, to
Hmm.
the cell phone, is like, how can you take this thing away from me, which is even closer to me than you are to me? And so,
Exactly.
in trying to solve that problem of we need to go about our daily lives, and so we're just going to give this kid a phone or a tablet to entertain themselves. We are
Mhm.
creating new problems that we don't even know how we're going to start to solve. And so I think what you're
Exactly.
doing is really, really amazing. It's really awesome, and I hope people get to sign up for that. Where could people go to learn more about you, about not your story, about you? If you want to know the story, watch this podcast. But where could
Yes.
people go to learn more about you and about how they can get in contact with you so you can help them?
I am by nature a shy person, so I don't have a lot of myself out there, but um, I'm very active on LinkedIn, so I could easily be reached on LinkedIn at Dr. Elliott Simo. Uh, that's my main profile. But then Lacroix's website is up and running, so you could send an email to contact at lacroix-institute.ca, and you're going to have answers, or just visit the website lacroix-institute.ca, lacroix-institute.ca. That's how to uh, reach uh, reach out and, yeah, ask questions, or find out anything that you need to find out. That point on kids is very important. I hope that more and more people spend time thinking about it, because it's beautiful to talk about technology. It seems very easy to just give a child an iPad and say, off you go. Especially many of us immigrants would come here and spend time working and working, having two, three, four jobs, and you barely. So this child develops a relationship with a device, and it just messes up their psychology. And so that's something that I'm very passionate about, helping children to stay safe online. And yeah, so if people would like to reach out, I'm going to be putting out a series of webinars, especially on my LinkedIn page. Links to the webinars will be there. I'll host events, town hall events, where would put down the devices, would turn them off, would sit down and just have a chat with a group of kids, teaching them about technology and having them, learn about how to use technology. The goal is that, generations are built one person at a time. So the goal is that, imagine in 10 years, if we've done this with 1,000 kids whose parents came here from somewhere, they would either be much more savvy when it comes to technology. So the problems their parents faced with not being digital talent, they would not have that problem, because they would have had a longer time to learn about how to use technology to make money, and they would be safer, hopefully, because they would know what the pitfalls are of the other side of technology. And so that's the goal, not just making people better now, but thinking about uh, making the next generation of uh, uh, immigrant kids feel better and have a better life for themselves. So that's really what motivates me.
You're incredible. I don't know if people tell you that, but you need to know that.
No,
Well,
people
guys,
don't.
people don't.
No, they don't.
Well, they should. They should.
They tell
Well,
me, why are you bringing this technology? I don't understand it. Why? Just get away. Why are you bringing me all these changes?
well, if you don't embrace change, like you said, you're soon going to be replaced by the things that are changing, right? Just look
Mhm.
about the case in point. See, 2020 was the year when everything changed. People who used to go
That's it.
into work in the office, now all of a sudden you need to know how to use Zoom. You need to know how to upload reports to an online system so that the
There
people
you
who are
go.
also working from their houses need to be able to access that. And
There
a
you
lot of
go.
people lost their jobs.
Good. So it's things like that, basic things like that, that made me to say, oh, gee, there's a big problem. So back then, working from home was like a privilege. I
Yes.
remember at the bank, uh, only the very top managers could dream of working from home. So sometimes when we come and we say, oh, where's this manager? Oh, she's working from home. And you sit there and you're dreaming to yourself, oh my God, when will I ever work from home? And sometimes they'll tell you that in order to work from home, you needed to be at a certain performance level, and you needed to have 2 years of experience. Like it was a whole package for you to work
Yes.
from home. Then COVID hits, and everybody is eligible to work from home. But the problem is not everybody knows how to use the technology that you need to work from home efficiently, and so it creates other problems. But anyways, that's how it is. So to your point, if you don't know how to use technology, you would be overtaken by that same thing that should be serving us. But then it's just going to overtake us because we don't know our way around, and those are the simple things that make me. I could stay up here till 1 a.m., 2 a.m., just pumping out different strategies or ideas on how to solve problems like that. Even if I don't get paid for it, I don't mind. I'm
Mhm.
just so happy when I see that a problem is solved. If I see that I could help somebody to know, like there was a time when somebody called me just on the side, please, could you help me show me how to share my screen? And in my mind, I'm like, that's so basic. Why
Wow.
wouldn't you know how to share your screen on Teams? Then I put myself in her shoe. She's 56. She hasn't ever used a chat tool before because in her offices you just pick up the phone and call. That's how.
Yes.
But then she found herself having to present some data to her manager who was remote, working remotely, and she had to share her screen,
The
and
screen.
she was all nervous. And I said, relax, don't worry, it's a few seconds. Click
Just press this
here.
button.
Exactly. Click here, click there. And she said, oh, that's it. Yeah, that's it. And she felt this kind of sense of relief. It's simple things like that that made me say, well, I think there's a problem that needs to be solved. And so, anyways, to your point, you need to be mindful of the fact that technology will not stop coming. Technology will not stop getting better. It's a whole business model. And so, what people need to do, especially those who are new here, is to ask yourself the question, what's in it for me? I have all of these tools. What can I do with it? That's what I can say about that specific point.
Great, great, great. It has been an absolute honor having you on my podcast, Elliot. And
Thank
for
you.
those who are going to be watching this in replay, check the links in the description. If you want to reach out to Elliot, check the links. They're going to be down in the description. If you're on YouTube, check the description. If you're on the podcast, check the show notes. And until next time, my friends, be legendary.